Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Kenny Conversation, brought to you by JEGS, the leader in high-performance aftermarket car parts. Remember to go to jegs.com for everything you need to fix your everyday vehicle up or even your hot rod. Well, you're looking at him, one of the great crew chiefs of all time, even crew chief for my big brother, Rusty Wallace, Robin Pemberton. Robin, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Kenny. Doing really good.
Well, there's been an APB put out on you, All Points Bulletin. Where has Robin Pemberton been? Where have you been?
Let's see. So I've been recently, the last 6 years, on and off. I've been in Indianapolis helping Jared Andretti with his sports car program at the Andretti team. So that came to an end. We closed the doors up there in November of last year. So that's I've been up there.
Yeah, we're going to kind of start backwards here. As I tell everybody, I did my work, lots of notes. So when I study up on you, you kind of left NASCAR, went to IndyCar a little bit. Are you still on the IndyCar appeals board?
No, I haven't seen that. No, I mean I was, but I think when I was on there before I went to work for the Andretti Motorsports, Andretti Autosport, but I was on the appeals board for a number of years. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, you have a fantastic story, and let's get right to it. Okay, 68 years old. I thought it sounded pretty cool. It said you were from New York, but you say you're not. So where were you born?
It's the little crossroads that I lived at was Malta, New York. All right, and so it was Saratoga Springs is 10 miles away. That's where my dad grew up. That's where horse racing is big, and but the town is Ballston Spa. That's the zip code, I guess. So we were in the outskirts, about 10 miles of Ballston Spa. It's in the country.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty far out. I mean, and the local track was Albany Saratoga Speedway.
I've raced there. I
Yeah.
raced there for Brett
Yeah.
Hearn. I'll
Yeah.
be darned.
Yeah, it was. It opened in '65, and the whole time they were building the track, the owners and the operators were, came to my mom and dad's restaurant. We owned the restaurant on the corner of Route 9 and 67. It was called Dunster's Restaurant. It's a family restaurant. My grandparents owned it before then. It was perfect because we're a mile from the racetrack and got to meet all the drivers and the families back then. And then in the summertime, it was centrally located. So drivers would stay there in that area and then watch the weather and they could go to Utica's, all weekend long. They could go to Stafford Springs, Catamount. They could go to Plattsburgh, Thompson, all of those places in a couple of hours. So it was big. It was great, and I got to meet some great people. I mean, I've known Jerry Cook since I was 9 years old.
What a legend!
Yeah,
Hall of Famer.
We're still friends and all of that. So, my drivers were that and Eddie Flemke, the Flemke family, and Ron Bouchard married Eddie Flemke's sister, and they used to stay across the street at a motel back in the day. And Pete Hamilton, Don McTavish was but Pete Hamilton and I were friends forever. And we always kept in touch. And, it was an inspiration, to just work on race cars, even though I was growing up in the restaurant business. And, I had I always wanted to do that. And, tried a couple different times to move south. And it didn't work. My friend Steve Meal was already south. He moved in the mid 70s. He was down there a few years before me. And he actually went to bat for me a couple different times for some jobs. And in '79, when Kyle won Daytona, and the door opened up, and they needed his quote to me is, "It'll be okay. They just need somebody to hold the dumb end of the tape measure right now, and that would be me.
We're checking toe. Well, you talk about Kyle. Kyle Petty won the ARCA race.
Right.
His very first time in a race car.
Yeah.
He's got one of Richard Petty's cars. Hey, let's kind of regroup right there. First of all, this is incredible information. And you and I did a lot of bonding. We just got off the Kyle Petty charity ride. So we were through New York. We went to Watkins Glen.
Right.
We were up at Niagara Falls. So when we were doing this riding a couple weeks ago, did you feel, I mean, I saw Albany, Saratoga, like 300 miles, as we were passing Lake Erie. When you were riding and your wife was on the back, were memories going through your mind on the Kyle Petty charity ride?
Yeah, they always do. I mean, that area, it's so vast and it's beautiful up there in the rural areas. And you think about going to these racetracks when you were younger, Syracuse Fairgrounds, right? And when they run a mile dirt there back in the day. And, those things flash in your mind as you're riding along. I mean, Malta's pretty far east. I mean, it's 45 minutes from Vermont or less, so it's pretty far east in the state.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. I call him the great Robin Pemberton, and I want to give you all some stats just to know what's up. In my opinion, one of the great crew chiefs of all time. Crew chief for 17 years in NASCAR for Kyle Petty, Mark Martin, Rusty Wallace. We're going to break all this down, but hang out with me now. 26 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series. The man you're looking at right now has given his whole life to NASCAR. We're gonna start with all the racing first. We know that you got ultra famous by becoming the NASCAR Vice President of Competition after your crew chief days. But let's continue on this journey right now, Robin. Right now, what we're talking about is your journey. So you leave that area of New York, and help me out here, but it says 1979, you make your way down south finally, and you become a fabricator and mechanic for none other than the great Petty Enterprises, becoming the crew chief in 1983. So paint me this picture as you leave New York and you're headed to Petty Enterprise.
I left the house with $65 in my pocket.
This is great.
And I had this, I drove this blue Corvette that I owned, which is a story all on its own. We'll talk another time about that.
Yeah.
And, so I drove down. So it's like early March right now, like first week of March. It was after Daytona was over with and all that. That's when they hired people. So Steve got me the job, and literally I slept in the car one night instead of a motel that was like $19 a night. I couldn't afford it. I paid $1 to get a shower, stayed there one night, and then the next night I slept in my car. I didn't even tell Steve until way later on in life. And so I walked in, literally a virgin, right? I had a little toolbox with, might have been a set of wrenches and a hammer in it, right? And you got guys that are in there with this massive Mac toolboxes and stuff. And I was overwhelmed, but they put me right to work in a fab shop, and it was $2.65 an hour.
Wow,
that's what you got paid, and time and a half for overtime.
$20 a day.
Yeah.
$100 a week. Oh my gosh.
The take home was like $87. So I was living on tomato soup for 3 or 4 cans for $1, depending on where I could get them, and macaroni and cheese in the box, Kraft, that was 3 or 4 for $1. So I would eat 1 can of soup for lunch, cut it in half with water, and I eat a box of macaroni and cheese at night. and that
And,
was it.
and
It
then when you
was,
like modern era,
and I
like
was so
right.
happy. I was happy.
Yes. Yeah. And you don't you sometimes during your journey, once you became a crew chief for the greats, and some of the crew members might complain, don't you want to go listen? I dr-
Yeah.
don't you want to tell them,
Yeah. I
Dick
mean,
Trickle? Yeah.
you start off on that and you're like, okay, I'm the guy who walked uphill in the snow to school and home uphill in snow to school. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like you can't even explain it to them, nowadays. I mean, they get it, but it's, you did it because it was like the coolest stuff ever,
Yeah. You
and
wanted it.
to just regress just a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to get this out. So when the Cup Series was doing their 68, 70 races, whatever it was, a year, right? They traveled all around up and down the East Coast, right? They raced Malta in 69 and 70.
Oh my.
Richard Petty stayed across the street in the motel, and their family ate in our restaurant every day that they were there, which was 2 or 3 days. So I met him then,
That is
right?
awesome.
And I was 12 or 13 years old, right? And I said, that guy, that's the guy I wanted. That's the ultimate cool right there,
Like looking at
And
Elvis Presley, it's like, oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. I mean, and I was fond of him, and then and it didn't hurt at all that Pete Hamilton was driving for him in 70 and won the Daytona 500.
God,
I
this is
mean, and so all
fantastic.
this stuff kind of ties together, that and good luck.
Did you and Rusty, my big brother, Rusty Wallace, you were Rusty's crew chief. Did you and Rusty ever have conversations about Pete Hamilton? Because we built Leaf
Yeah,
Spring, USAC race cars, and
yeah,
we built those around Pete Hamilton because he was
yeah,
a big Leaf Spring guy. You and
yeah,
Rusty ever have a conversation?
yeah. We had some. We did. It was fun. It was
Yeah.
fun because it's all this common thread is just going through life, right? I mean, it's amazing. It really is amazing. To me, it is.
We're going to stay right here, but while we're talking about Big Brother Rusty, I see something here that is awesome. And I don't know if it's still true or not, but listen to this little nugget. Rusty Wallace and Robin Pemberton at the time set a record for longest relationship as driver crew chief, 230 races. Are you aware of that?
No. No,
It's out
I
there.
mean, I knew her 7 years, but and that's
That's a
when we
long
started out
time.
was what, 29, 30 races a year, not 37 or 8 or whatever it is. Yeah,
Well, respond
it's
right
pretty
here,
good.
everybody. That's part of the Kenny conversation.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty awesome. And
yeah,
okay, let's go back. Let's keep rolling. Okay, so you come down the hill, you see Richard Petty's in your restaurant. You got Albany, Saratoga. Now we painted the picture of why you're a racer. Uh, and Steve Mills, your buddy, he gets down south. And I always think that's funny, Robin. Are you going south? I mean, you could be in California, you could be in Missouri, and nobody says, "Are you going NASCAR?" They always say, "Are you headed south?"
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I love that. I love that. That was just code for I'm going NASCAR.
Right.
Get on down Interstate 95. Okay, so you get to Petty Enterprise, and we start building our resume. Were you and Kyle Petty? Did you and Kyle become friends? I just know that, and we're going to get there. But you and Kyle, you crew chief for Kyle, you won races together. When you first made it to Penny Enterprise, what was your relationship with Kyle Petty?
Yeah, yeah. We were friends, and it was different. Kyle was married already, right? So
Oh wow, yeah,
it's not like you could get together and go have a few beers or something somewhere. You know
yeah.
what I mean? That didn't happen. And and at that time for us in that era, there was you didn't do a lot of drinking unless you went to the beach somewhere. You know what I mean? You didn't go out every night and meet guys and play pool or have some beers, right? There was that wasn't in our area. I don't know what it was like in Charlotte or anywhere else. But, those 5 years that I was there, you may have gone out, if you got to know people, local people, you may have gone out one night a week or something like that, but it wasn't, and Kyle was married, so he didn't go out with any of us at all.
We've had Kyle Petty on Kenny Conversation. Obviously, you and Kyle are very close. I'm very good friends with Kyle. What do I remember about Petty Enterprise never running the Busch decal because Grandma and Grandpa didn't approve of drinking? What is there? You're talking about just relaxing every once in a while you're at Petty. Did they
Right.
look down on drinking?
I don't know what their story was, but I respect it. You know what I mean? And I think it was more about Grandma.
Gotcha.
I think it was more about that than anything. And I have no idea where, and didn't get in their business at all about it. Right? So respect that.
I'm like you. You could drink beer and have a good time, but boy, at that time, Anheuser-Busch was in NASCAR, and there was some money there, and the Petty Enterprises is like, nope, we're not running the decal. We don't drink. And okay, I find this very heartfelt. To me, it's very emotional, just because, man, as a kid, I mean, that STP car, when you walked in that shop and you saw that day glow orange, red, whatever you want to call it, I mean, did it just hit you like a ton of bricks? Oh my God!
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I watched that stuff on TV
Yes.
forever.
Yes.
And most of it was Wide World of Sports a week late or something like that.
Yes.
But I mean, it was, to me, that was everything. That car, that man, that team, that organization was, for whatever reason, at a young age, it was all over me. I loved it.
Oh, 100%. I get it. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I feel like I'm in the car with you right now. So we just come off the Kyle Petty charity ride. It's a wonderful event. When you look at Richard Petty today, everybody else, AJ Foyt's my man, but let's face it, AJ's a big man.
Yeah.
And you look at Richard, and he has stayed so skinny, and he has stayed so active, and he was on his trike with us. Here's a guy that's 87 years old, and he's riding with us.
Yeah.
When your time around Richard, how is he able to? Is he a freak of nature? What is your opinion? What is the deal with Richard Petty?
I'll tell you, if you get down to the nitty gritty, as we all know, if you're in the know, he gets his sleep when he needs to, right? He gets his nap in the afternoon, so he has plenty of energy stored up when
Gotcha.
when it's time to show. But yeah, he's. I'll tell you, when we used to beat up and down the road. And I liked the drive because at least I got a seat up front, right? Plus, I was
Yeah.
low man on the totem pole.
You were
And
big
in
time.
those days, you drove everywhere. You drove
Yes.
everywhere. You got, if you were going to Michigan, and generally you started on Thursday in those days, Thursday, the weekend. You would drive up on Wednesday, and you'd get in the van, and I'd be driving. And Richard would be third row. Remember those old Comfort Coach vans with the raised roof and the TVs in them and all that
Yes.
stuff, right?
Yes.
I'd be going up the highway, and out of the clear blue, the man's got his hat over his head like that, in the third row, asleep, you would assume. And you'd be cruising along, and you'd be going up this rise. He goes, "You see that up there?" And it's like, what? It's a cop sitting at the top of the hill. It's like, I wasn't going to see it for another 100 yards. And he's in the cheap seats, right? And he says something. This happened more than once, I can tell you that. And
Yeah.
he's just that guy.
He's aware.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. He's aware. I tell Kyle all the time, I said, man, I'm afraid of your dad. And Kyle Petty would say, I'm afraid of my dad too.
Yeah.
I mean, Richard Petty, he's bigger than life. And I'm riding my trike with my wife, and I look in my mirror, and Richard's behind me. That day, I think it was Wednesday, and I'm thinking I'm gonna check on Richard's awareness. There, how our line on the Kyle Petty charity ride, it
Yeah.
would yo-yo, and he'd come up on me, he'd slow down. I mean, but you paint a good picture. The reason Richard, he's got his body tempered. He knows when to sleep. He's ready to go. That's good information, Robin. Thank
Yeah.
you. He gets his sleep.
I'm trying to be just like him. I try to take my nap every day around 3:30 or something.
Yes. Hey, me too. Hey, I took a nap at 3:00 on Saturday, and then I won a good big race because I was
See,
ready.
I'm telling you, there's something there.
Okay, you're down at Petty Enterprises. Man, that was some good stuff right there.
Yeah.
Actually, really good. So his nickname, Richard Petty's nickname, is the King because he won everything. He
Right.
was the king. When you're in Petty Enterprises and you're constantly winning, was winning the norm? I mean, like if you didn't win, paint that picture for me about just always winning, or was it the time Richard wasn't winning all the time? When did you
Yeah.
come in?
I mean, I was in so that year, the first year there, Richard won his last championship.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Lucky
So they
you.
won more races after that, but nonetheless, now we're on the downhill swing, and I think they're trying to build a brand with Kyle and stuff like that. So it's like handing things off, but
Yeah, good stuff.
he did he raced to what 80, 89? No, 91, something like that.
When Jeff Gordon came in,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
Jeff Gordon runs Atlanta. Richard wrecks out on the front straightaway. That
Right.
was the big thing. What a memory. Jeff Gordon comes in, his first race is Atlanta, and that was Richard's last race.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So comes a time where Jack Roush, I mean,
Right.
big name from the automotive world. Jack Roush says, "I'm going to start a NASCAR team."
Yeah.
So you
that was after my stint at Dyegard and with
oh
Butch Mock. I was at Butch Mock's and Bob Rahilly's in '84, right?
okay,
And then '85 went to Dyegard. Bobby was there, Greg Sachs was there. Eventually, Willie T. Ribbs was there. I mean, it just went. It was just it was not managed its best, and then that was the end of it. And and to try to so at the end of Petty Enterprises, at the end of '83, when Richard was getting ready to remember, he went and drove Curb's car,
you're right.
But the
Yep.
little snippet in between that is so. We knew he was leaving, and so I had a great relationship with him. So and I told him, I said, look, at the end of the year, I'm gonna go work for Butch and Bob.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Because
okay.
he's leaving. Richard's leaving. At this time, did it feel like the world's falling apart? Petty Enterprises, Richard Petty's
Sometimes
leaving?
it was a little disjointed, Richard, that's the time I don't know if you remember, we were at some banquet somewhere, this, that, and the other, and Rick Hendrick made a comment to Richard jokingly, about not driving for Rick. They were negotiating. The best I can recall, Richard and Rick were talking about Richard going over there in '84.
Wow.
Right. So you kind of weave this together. I'm leaving and going to Butch and Bob.
Yeah.
And so we're in Charlotte, October of '83, and he grabs me, and like I said, we always had a really good relationship. Always did, always will. And he grabs me, puts his arm around me, and whispers in my ear. He's like, "You think them boys would like me to drive their car?" I said, "Well, I can see." So at the end of the night, we're all done. Whatever. I go find Butch Butch. And I said, hey, man, I said, the King's talking to Mr. Hendrick, but I don't know what's going on. And he wanted to know if you guys would entertain the thought of having him drive. And all hell broke loose. They were talking, Mike Curb was involved. Anyways, we actually went to Daytona and tested. So the Speedway car was built in Petty Enterprises. So as a guy named Warren Prout was the head of building, and Richie Bars and myself, so 83. So the car went over to Butch and Bob's, Ray Mock, and Buddy Parrott was going to be the crew chief. And,
yes.
And we tested, and this is going to be great. I'm changing springs with him. I'm learning what I can learn. And then something happened, whatever happened in negotiations, and it went south with Raymock. And then they took the team, and that was Mike Curb's team that they did in Kannapolis with the King. But it was going to be Raymock first, right? And so that thing, yeah. So then that year we had a bunch of different drivers and this, that, and the other. And then the year after I went to Dygard, and that was another fiasco. And then so now fast forward to get to your Roush days.
Yeah.
Right? I'm mowing the yard. It's Sunday afternoon. We must have raced Saturday, obviously, somewhere. And I got a push mower, one of them cool push mowers that goes by itself. Well, I'm so mad I'm not even letting it go by itself. I'm just
You're pushing
I'm pushing this damn thing. And I told Lisa, I said, look, just let me mow. Just leave me alone. It's like a small house, but it had 3/4 acre yard, so it was plenty to mow. She comes out, she yells out, hey, telephone call. I said, what did you not understand? No, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not talking to anybody. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. She goes back in, and I start pushing again, this, that, and the other. She comes back out. She goes, no, this guy really needs to talk to you. And I was like, okay. She said, it's a friend of Paul Giltman. Now, do you remember Paul was the Ford engineer? He helped. He was at Dygard and helped me. He helped me at Sabco later on. He did a bunch of stuff, but he was a good race engineer. And she said, it's a friend of Paul's, and Paul told him to call you. I said, well, who is it? His name's Jack something, Jack Roush or whatever. I go, I'll be right there. I mean,
hold on.
I said, I'm going drag racing maybe. I don't know. I got to get out of this. So anyways, I go get the call, and he says, Jack, this, that, and the other. I'm trying to put a team together. Got your number. And, I'd like to meet with you. Yeah. Okay. And he's like, I'll give you a call. We'll set up something. So he set up a meeting and this is like the second week of August at Charlotte Airport at the Holiday Inn there, which is now something else. And said, okay. So that day I roll up in there and whatever, and I get out, and there's Steve Meal.
I'll be darned.
Okay. I said, what are you doing here? He said, well, Jack Roush called. I said, well, he called me too. So Jack didn't really know that him and I were friends, let alone friends since we were like 13 years old. Right. Wow. So we go in there and so we interviewed Jack, I think, a little bit, and he interviewed us a little bit.
Do you got enough money?
Yeah,
do you know what you're getting into?
Yeah. And so we did all that talking and so we went our separate ways, and Jack said he'll get back with us. And so anyways, so we were going to the next race or something like that a week after. It was Bristol. And so that was the night race. So Thursday, remember Thursday Night Thunder, right? Dave Despain and a little bit of news or something like that. Thursday night, whatever.
Big show.
Yeah. So somewhere on there, he said, Jack Roush is going cup racing. I have not seen it, but I got the wrath of it. Is going NASCAR cup racing and putting a team together, and he's talking Robin Pemberton and Steve Meal and Robin Pemberton and blah blah blah. I didn't hear it. I didn't know. I went to the racetrack the next morning, fat, dumb, and happy, and like ain't nobody talking to me. So finally, during the day, sometime it's like, okay, we're going through it. Bob Rahilly, he unleashed everything on me. He mad, ungrateful self. I said, "What are you talking? Going to work
Yeah.
for Jack Roush?" And I said, "Holy!" I said, "Who told you that?" He said, "It was on the frickin' TV." I said, "Ah." Well,
Yeah.
whether it was or it wasn't, some of it was. Whatever. So we ran the race, and after the race, he's like, "All right, tonight was your last night. You're done." It's like, no, this isn't good, right?
Yeah. You're not
So
ready
I
to
had
quit.
nothing,
Yeah.
right? I think Lisa might have been pregnant at the time. I don't even know.
My
And
Lord. Yeah.
and I go home, and it's like, okay, now I know where I'm going to work. There was
Yeah.
no shop. There was we Steve and his wife Lisa. They found a building in Liberty, North Carolina. It was an old furniture warehouse. It wasn't old. It was just like, I don't know, 10,000 square foot. It had hardly no electricity in it. Had a bathroom in it, and that's where we started. And we started that like week after that, like he was there a week before me, but it was the last week of August or something. I got there, and I was driving 96 miles each way to
Mm.
work and home every day. Did it for 16 months, and we worked 7 days a week for 16 months. We worked a half a day on Thanksgiving, and we took Christmas off, and then worked again, and then got Thanksgiving off the next year. So in 16 months, we had like 3.5 days off.
Okay,
Crazy.
what you just told me was like a tornado just ripped right through my
Oh
brain.
yeah.
And here's why I want to go back and summarize what you just told me. Two of the most ground shaking things in NASCAR history you just explained in 10 minutes. Richard Petty leaves Petty Enterprises, goes to Curb, which is unbelievable. He wins Daytona for
Right.
Curb. He wins Dover.
Right.
It's like, what? How does, who owns Petty Enterprise? How does Richard Petty leave his own company? Did
Right.
Lee own it? I mean, okay, that's another story. And then all of a sudden, Steve Meal and you start Roush Racing literally.
Yeah.
Steve finds the building, and it's you and him like blood brothers. You remember him from 13. So right there, two. You're a Hall of Famer. You're a Hall of Famer. You are because
I
you
don't know
move.
about that.
No, you really are. And
I'm going
listen.
today to visit some people, but I'm not a Hall
Well,
of Famer.
I mean, when people listen to this, you were there for the most pivotal moments in
Yeah.
NASCAR history, and I just pointed them out. I think one thing that amazes me how smart you became from coming from the restaurant business to seeing your hero to driving him around to Jack Roush going, I need to get a hold of this Robin Pemberton. Where did these mechanical skills come from? I mean, you had a restaurant. Where did you learn this so
I
quick?
don't know. I mean, it was hell. I was like everybody else. You took your bicycles apart and put them back together again
Yeah,
all the time,
that was me.
right? You put
Yes.
chopper forks on them and sissy bars and
Yes.
banana seats, right? I don't know.
Oh,
I always enjoyed it.
so this is one of these deals where we're going to go 3 hours. So we're not going to skip stuff, but we're gonna gloss over it. Okay, so Roush Racing becomes legendary, and that's all you can say. That it's just unbelievable. So you and Steve Meal built Roush Racing, literally got its first building, and today uh, they created some of the greatest race car drivers in NASCAR history. So you get Roush Racing going, and boy, this is kind of where I come in. I don't really come in here, but this is what I remember. So we got this. we got this very wealthy man from Cuba, Felix Sabates. Felix Sabates starts a team called Sabco, 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 Sabco Racing. So you eventually go to Sabco Racing. And I remember you and Kyle lighting the world on fire. Tell me about your time at Sabco with Kyle Petty as the driver.
It was really good and it was fun. Um, you know, it was when I got there, it was Gary had just left, and they got to the point where, and it happens, where they weren't
Gary Nelson.
Gary
Yep.
Nelson, and they weren't getting along that well, and so he had an opportunity to go to NASCAR to be their competition director. And so so this is the second time I followed Gary, right? First time was
I was
Zygarde.
getting ready to interrupt you and go, okay, what was it about Sabco?
Yeah.
Remember,
So
everybody, listen up. Later on, that man right there ends up going to NASCAR. Okay, let's stay at Sabco.
So we started, and we would go test, and Kyle's demeanor it wasn't relaxed in the car. It was nervous, not nervous, but it wasn't as relaxed as what I would want him to be, right? And I remember we were at a test somewhere, and he comes in, take the window net down, he's holding the wheels, looking forward, and talking to him about the car, and I said to him, I said, look, I said, you're gonna have to relax, and what I'm telling you is, you drive the car with your fingertips. Don't have some death grip on this thing, like you're trying to make it do something it's not going to do. I said, tell us what it's doing, and we're going to work on the car. And you just chill out. No, I'm not. Nobody cares, right? Just be easy on it. And I said, just if it doesn't do something right, you don't have an answer. It doesn't matter to me. We'll go run it again. We'll go try it again, or whatever. We developed this relationship where I wasn't going to yell at him for anything, and I think there was a time that maybe somebody was that way, and that's not Kyle's personality at all, right? He's a lower key, fun loving guy, but he's more gentle than that. And so we developed a really good relationship, and we worked on our cars really hard. We we won some races. Didn't win a lot, but we won races. That one race at Rockingham where, I don't know, what's it, 492 laps, we led 480 of them or something like that.
That is badass.
It was one of them, we just had that stuff going on. We finished in top 5 in points 2 years in a row, and I don't think he's been in top 15 before then. Had just solid runs, good feedback, nothing insane on my part, you know what I mean? Things like that.
I got to get this off my chest because Kyle will hear about this. I grew up with my dad, Russ Wallace, and my dad always wanted to know why. When I made it down south and I run second at Richmond to Mark Martin, my dad would say, how come you couldn't outrun Mark Martin? I'm like, well, I was pushing, Dad. The car was tight in the middle of the corner. And my dad would say, why? Because my dad won everything.
Yeah, your dad was a driver. He was a shoe.
Yeah, and so then you bring Rusty, and then Rusty, I love my brother more than anything, but he started my team. And then Rusty couldn't figure out why I wasn't as good as him. And he would get frustrated with me. So by the time you got Kyle, I'm sure Richard Petty, the great Richard Petty, just couldn't figure out why Kyle wasn't great. And it makes it hard on us, because not everybody's the greatest. So I really like that story, Robin. And I want to thank you on behalf of me being a driver. It's really nice to have a crew chief go, look, calm down. It's all good.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that's one reason you and Kyle are such great friends right now, because
Yeah.
You're probably the medicine he needed at that time.
That time. Yeah, it was good.
And I understand that. Why aren't you as good as me? I'm great. Why aren't you great? Because I went through that with Rusty. Kyle went through that with Richard. And great job. So tell that story, and then we'll leave Sabco. Tell that great story that you told on the Kyle Petty charity ride. So you guys win Watkins Glen, but there was an incredible test about the front end. Tell that story, how you won Watkins Glen.
So we were up there testing, and it was good. But he was like, look, going up through the S's, if I can just mat it and run wide open through there, that'll fix everything else. Just get it through there. It's like, okay, golly. So I said, let me, that's all you need. Sure, we're on wide open. So
let me get you a new car.
Let me unhook two of the four barrels, right? You know what I mean? So so they were putting garage doors in the long garage building there. There's boxes all over, this, that, and the other. And I said, I get a razor knife and a long straight edge. And you remember the noses on the Pontiacs, they come down, and then the bottom was like that. It was like 4 inches stuck out, right?
There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
Had that big dip in there, and
so
come out.
I went, after watching other races, and you're looking at aerodynamics or different things. So I cut strips of cardboard 4 inches wide that went all around the front of the car, all around the lower 4 inches. So I'd put 2 strips on there, and I'd tape them on with tape and duct tape, and it made it go out a 1/4 inch a side or something like that.
We're testing.
He went out 1/4 inch all the way around, 1/4 inch forward, 1/4 inch on the side. He went out and run, goes, man, I don't know. I think it's better. All right, more cardboard. I get 3 this time or 2 this time, and I put it on again. He's like, it's better. It actually is better. I just keep putting the stuff on there. Finally, I wind up with 2 inches thick of cardboard around the whole thing. The 2 inches wide on the 2 inches wider out front, everything. So it was a total of 4 inches wide. 4 freaking inches.
You make the nose bigger.
And I gave up because I thought just give up right there, right? So he said, I can run wide open. So, all right, we finished our test, made all of our other adjustments and stuff around. The car got pretty good. Good enough that he could push the clutch in and coast through the kink in the back. He didn't even have to downshift or brake. He just pushed the clutch in and not even downshift, that kind of stuff.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah. What a blessing.
Yeah.
That's
Anyway, so we get home, and they said, okay, now what are you going to do? So I called this place. It was Harry's Glass in Jacksonville, Florida, or whatever. So my brothers, Ryan and Roman, were working for me at the time, right?
Yeah.
And I always love to have those guys. They're just so good.
And I love you.
I said, all right, this is what we're going to do. We cut the nose off from the hood seam all the way down the fenders, all the way, then the whole bottom. And I took it off, and I said, Roman, get in the van, take this thing to Harry's Glass. I already called because I knew somebody there. Anyways, whatever, you made an appointment. He dropped that thing off. They bondoed on it. They got it off cool, this, that, and the other. Took a splash off of it, molded a nose off of it.
Wow.
And then we had it back in a week, right? This is insane.
Did you swear him to secrecy?
Yeah,
Did you swear Harry's Glass to secrecy?
Yeah. So it was, so we put it on, dressed everything up, and it was nice because, it was normal thickness everywhere. It didn't look but real cobbled up. And we put it on. So we go to the track. And so we had it used to say Grand Prix, 2 big names on the front. So we just put G with the dash and Prix, Prix on it.
Yeah.
And kept it because of the brake ducts and whatever else. And whatever. So some people complained that we must have narrowed the nose up because you couldn't fit the whole Grand Prix on there. So whoever the tech guy was at the time, they knew the number, and everything's round in those days. You didn't know where to pull a tape measure from. So a couple guys come and they went and pulled the tape measure from it, and I said, "What's going on?" "Oh, we're just checking to see if you've narrowed the nose up at all." "No, it's obvious this thing's not been narrowed up," and off they go. And I was like, "Holy cow!"
They just.
Yeah, this is a great heist right here.
This is why you and Gary Nelson end up going to work for NASCAR.
I don't know.
Yes, it's true. I mean, in reality, it's funny, right?
So, anyways, we wound up running, and we were pretty good. We got a decent caution, but we were good there 2 years in a row. I mean, we were really good. And so you win the race and you celebrate and you come home.
Yeah, isn't what you just said that is quickly that reminds me. This has nothing to do with it has everything to do with what we're talking about. You said you won the race and you come home. And I've said this before. I'm going to repeat it, but you never heard it. I was talking to Kyle Busch in the RV parking lot at Bristol. And I said, what's the deal? We're just talking. He goes, you know what? He says, I win these cup races at 5:00. And by 11:00, I'm bummed out because it's over. In life, if you don't celebrate those wins, and you and I grew up rough. You'd win the Daytona 500, and the next day at noon, we're at Rockingham.
Yeah.
In our minds. And I don't know why we're so bad on each other, but just listening to you say we won the race and went home. But you worked so hard to win that race.
Yeah.
We're our own worst enemy. And I know winners do that. And I don't know about all that. I get it. I totally get it. But yeah, just you saying that struck a nerve with me. You win the race, you go home. You won one of the biggest races in America.
Right.
Cup is the highest form of motorsports there is. It's just that we're involved in it. We don't really realize how big it is. Man, great job. And that's where those engineering skills come from you. And little by little, we're peeling it away.
Basic. It's just basic, working hard, common sense stuff,
You're smart.
The other big thing that we did that year, the next year, I guess it was that year, I can't remember, when we sat on the pole for the Daytona 500.
That's big.
That was monster. That is the only trophy I was ever given, ever. I don't have a trophy from any wins or anything like that. Not a plaque, a ribbon, or whatever. But I've got that.
That car had a weird noise. Wow.
What's that?
That car you sat on a pole with, it had a strange noise.
We did that car. We built the body on that car at Talladega at the racetrack.
That's incredible.
I've been in the wind tunnel a bunch, and I started looking at ride heights before people really looked at a lot of ride heights. And I started looking at the drag numbers on D-rate, a lot of travel, stuff like that. And it was like, holy cow. So I would make a spring change at Talladega, and it'd travel more, it'd go fast, it'd knock the body off. So I made a body change to go with the spring change, and I did it again and again and again. And that's where the car, if you were there, had really high wheel arches in it. The back looked like,
big wheel openings.
Oh, it's huge. And
short track stuff.
We unloaded that car, and people come by laughing. What, Felix, make you bring your Martinsville car? God damn. Blah, blah, blah.
Watch this, buddy.
I mean, I was like, oh, okay. Well, it was so good. We ran with a small restrictor plate on our own. Like, that's it. So we would go out and run, and we would come into the garage. And Steve Peterson, remember Steve? God rest his soul, good guy.
Yeah.
He'd be standing at the front of the car and he'd open the hood, take the carburetor off. He'd take the plate, And he'd look at it and he'd go, shake his head because the gauge wouldn't go in the plate. It was small by like 30 thou or 20 thou or something.
That's
It's like,
awesome.
and he'd put it back. We go out and run, this, that, and the other. When we come back in, we'd blast the lap. We'd come back in. Steve's standing there. He did it like 4 times until he finally realized it was, wasting his time. And that thing, it car hauled ass, and we had an issue on a gas stop, and the fuel guy didn't get it full. We had to stop under green. We literally made up a lap under green at Daytona, and coming up through there, and that's when Bobby Hillen and somebody else got together and took us out, but
that's why Kyle was so mad. He knew he was
Yeah.
going to win the Daytona 500.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we weren't even fretting, right? That thing was, it was as good as Bill Elliott at Talladega that time, right? I mean, he smoked the field. I mean, we felt that good about it. We really did. And, you always have those that get away. That one got away. That one hurt.
I remember when I made it down south, and Big Brother had me down there, and we were always going to 8 Mile Road, wherever it was in Detroit.
Yeah.
And, wind tunnel. You recognized, what I'm learning here is you were really good at understanding the wind tunnel, reading the numbers, looking at travel. Would you say that was your specialty, aerodynamics?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I wasn't special at anything, but I enjoyed a lot of it, and I was obsessed with it, to be honest with you. We especially speedway stuff, because you could do a little stuff that was hidden, that was asymmetric on the car, that was good for yaw numbers and lower drag and stuff like that, and I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy making the cars that when they were started to really make them banana shaped the wrong way, and that didn't appeal to me, and some of it got away from me, but I didn't like the way the cars looked that way. I tried to be a little bit cooler about it, but sometimes it was crazy on what people could get away with.
Okay. We have an issue. We're in an hour, which is great.
Hey, when's the last time we did not have an issue with something?
Yeah. Everybody says, quit trying to cut your deals too short. Then I have some people say they're so long. I'm like, Joe Rogan's 3 hours.
Yeah.
We're trying to do Robin Pemberton's whole life in 1 hour. Not going to happen. All right. So that's awesome. Great highlights at each team. You start Roush Racing. You make Kyle happy. You guys get going. You're fast. And this is where I come in. You go to work for arguably the greatest race car owner in the history of motorsports to this day. I would debate with people that there's a bigger car owner in the world.
Worldwide. Correct.
Worldwide. I mean, we're talking Ferrari and, you name it. Roger Penske Racing, 20 Indianapolis 500 wins. He's won the last 3 Cup championships. Roger Penske. I mean, we know Rick Hendrick is a juggernaut. We know Rick's great. But, I mean, when you talk Roger Penske, you're talking history. You're talking Mark Donohue. So you get to Penske Racing, and your driver is my big brother, Rusty Wallace. Now you've come up against a firestorm. Rusty's jacked up on Sundrop. He's checking shot graphs. You guys are cutting noses off before you load the car up. Tell me about this time. Now, you guys have a lot of success. Tell me about your time with Rusty Wallace and Roger Penske.
We had. It wasn't without its discussions, right?
Oh, it's intense. It's very intense.
But when I got there, so I'm looking at this facility and everything's beautiful. I'm like, this is This is great. I've been with good people, good places, and I get looking around. First thing I see is a rack of 30 different radiators on the wall in the transportation department back there, outside where Earl's used to park his truck. And I'm looking, it's like, what is that? Why is that like that? Why? And then we get looking at the cars. And this car was a Hopkins car. This car was a Laughlin car. This car had high door bars. This one was low door bars. This one had a different cross member in the front. This one is like, how do you make rhyme or reason to that? Right? This one couldn't fit dual master cylinders and it had a single master cylinder on it. It's like, Jesus sakes. Yeah. So the first thing
over-engineered.
Or it could have been the hot trick of the day. Yeah. You get your ass waxed by somebody and go, what kind of cars you got? Oh, go get one. Right. I don't know if that happened, but it was a lot of different stuff. So I started the chassis shop. Had 3 guys. And I said, all right, we're going to do this thing. And first off, we're going to try to get the cars, get everything calmed down, get it where, your spare car was just like the car you were racing if you wrecked it, or this, that, and the other. So getting that organized was a big feat. And, but it was, Don supported it, which was great. And, then you had short track radiators and super speedway radiators and intermediate, and all had the same fittings in them and not a bunch of different stuff. So, we worked hard on that. And then, we worked hard on identifying best cars, wind tunnel numbers. And, you would look at wind tunnel sheets and go, okay. And then you'd look at the setup in the tunnel. And it's like, why is the frame heights used to be, 4, 5, 5, and 6 or something like that, or whatever. Yeah. And they were all over the place. Like, why is this different? And it was like, well, when you run this at Atlanta, you're inspecting a car near the wash pit. And then that way the quarter panel, if you get it in the right spot, the quarter panel can be higher. So when we go to the wind tunnel, we run that car 1/2 inch high in the right rear. And it's like, well, none of the numbers even matched to me. It was very difficult at the time. And so we just tried to get it better organized. And, maybe it took some of the advantage out of some trickery, but we were more consistent, right? The cars were more consistent. And I wanted it to be where Rusty would get in a car and not say, oh, this is such and such and, whatever. Get that part of it behind us. So that was a big feat. And, we did pretty good. We wound up being able to work on the cars, and we won every year, and that one year we had a really good year. We sat on a lot of poles, and I think we won 5 races or 4 or 5 races in there. It was good.
One of my favorite things, and I don't know if you were part of this or not, but I learned so much from my big brother Rusty. It is true, Rusty is better than Mike and myself at racing. Rusty was always a gadgeteer. I can remember if a watch would break, my mom would say, here, Rusty, fix this watch. Rusty was a gadgeteer. He could fix things. So
him and Bobby Allison were the same. Him and Bobby. Yeah. Same thing. I was.
Bobby taught us how to check bump steer with the back of a toolbox. We just took a tape measure, and we take a toolbox and we put it right up against that right front. And Bobby said, okay, we got rubber bushings on the inner lower A-frame. So we got to, yes. Oh my God. I mean, you're like family right now, because that is so true. Bobby Allison taught Rusty. Dick Trickle taught Rusty.
Yeah.
Rusty was smart to talk to the right people and gain quick knowledge. So one thing that I thought was awesome, and straighten me out, I'm going to say this and then you say yes or no. We'd go to Bristol and everybody'd raise their cars up because the cross members would hit. And Rusty told me, no, we're going to cut the cross member off and we're going to raise the motor up, because the motor only weighed 500 pounds. The car was 3,600 pounds or whatever.
Yeah.
Were you there during that time?
That was version 1. Version 2 was we're going to cut the crossmember out. We're going to run a smaller oil pan, and we run a 10-inch flywheel, and we leave the motor. We ran the engine low at Bristol.
Because you redesigned the motor?
Yeah, we had a small. We had a hell. The transmission would drag before, and the transmission was lower than the bell housing and the oil pan.
You were ahead of your time.
When we went there the last few years, we had we had great cars, and we took a new car there almost every other race for him.
Oh yeah,
just build a new car. But those cars with the low motor, you'd open the hood and you could put that much air cleaner in them. I mean, it was great.
Robin, Rusty, and I know this is how you guys did it, and I want you to respond to this. Rusty said to me, everybody knew they were going to wreck at Bristol, so they'd take their worst equipment.
Exactly right.
He said, I knew I was going to win. I was taking my very best.
We'd build new stuff. We would build new stuff and take it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The year when what's his name? He came to. Geez, I'm having a.
That's okay.
He came to be our partner. He came to be our driving partner. Ryan Newman.
Yeah.
When Ryan Newman came, his first season, every car that he had that I gave those guys, or that we did, our team said, "Here, this is a good start." Either set on a pole or won a race, or was brand new. That's how he started.
You developed it all. Yeah. You made
it. We gave it to him after we set on a pole or won a race.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
You know, I'm on track here, but one thing that really, some things hit people differently. I will never forget you and Big Brother Rusty Wallace celebrating your 40th birthday party together. You guys were two peas in a pod. You and Rusty at that time were super tight.
Yeah, it was brutal.
But can you believe that you were only 40? And that was, I mean, you guys were kicking ass and taking names. Yeah. That was a good night. I was there.
Yeah, a lot of people were there. I can't believe the people that came in.
I think that affected Rusty. I think I remember Rusty saying he didn't like being 40 at that moment.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he had a time with it. He recognized it at 40.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have to leave now your crew chief days. Let's just say this. You were a great crew chief, 26 wins. You did it all. I want to ask this before I move on. And I know this is going to be hard, but during your crew chief days, give me 2 or 3 things. Just go 1, 2, 3 that stand out. It could be from Petty Enterprises. It could be from Roush. It could be from Sabco. What you look back and you smile? Was it the nose wider at Watkins Glen? Was it you and Rusty making these rotating parts lighter and smaller? Yeah. What do you look back on and you smile as a crew chief?
I don't know. I think Mark Martin's first win
was big,
cool.
Big.
I mean,
Roush Racing.
Yeah. Just being at Petty Enterprises and with those people, every year they still have a Christmas party for employees, and we all go down there.
Richie Barr?
Richie Bars was there.
What a name!
He was brutal. He's the only man that made me cry.
They say don't.
He was hard on me.
They would say
he should have been.
Yeah, well, don't get close to your heroes.
Yeah,
they'll disappoint you. That's true.
For sure. And so we had. I have so many good memories. It's small and large, and being out with Felix and learning about unlucky $50 bills one night when we were in Atlanta, made us all take them out of our pocket, tore them up in little pieces and threw them in the ashtray. I said, well, here's this rich dude. I just give him $300 in 50s. Tommy Kendall was with us because Tommy used to go with us sometimes road racing and stuff. Tommy and myself, Felix, might have been Kyle. We Tommy didn't have 50s. He didn't even have 20s. So Felix tore them all up and threw them in the ashtray in the bar. While we weren't looking, Kendall picked them up, ashtray up and put the whole thing in his pocket. But I'm thinking, there's this millionaire dude. He's going to take my money and he's going to give me a $500 bill in exchange. Hell no. We just lost our money. He just tore them up because they were unlucky. The next day at the racetrack, Tommy comes with all these 50s all taped up. He's got a guy at the bank that's going to give him new money for him, like
like, hey, okay, hold on. What was it? Okay, today we got this social media, and I'm on it as much as anybody. But those days were like Studio 54. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Mm-hmm. I mean, but life in NASCAR, there was too much money. All the sponsors, Tide, Anheuser-Busch, Miller-Brunn, everybody, they were
RJ
baking.
Reynolds. What RJ Reynolds did. Every week at the racetrack, RJ Reynolds would take an entire team out for dinner on each of the nights, somewhere in there. I mean, it would spend thousands of dollars, thousands every night, just being there, just taking people out.
They even did. I think Time Magazine did an article on the explosion of NASCAR.
Yeah,
there was all the money in the world you needed. Felix was, him and George Shin. They owned part of the basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
Felix was
Charlotte. He owned the Charlotte Checkers. Right, we went to hockey games. Right, you were driving there then.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It was a glorious time.
Yes.
In NASCAR, I don't know if we'll ever see those. It's kind of like was it CBGB there in New York? If you sang, you went there, you went to that little bar, and you went to Studio 54. New York was rocking, and I think at the same time, now that we look back, those days in NASCAR were unbelievable. Just the money, it was, the ratio was, you had more money than what sponsor you want. People were begging to be sponsors. Can I sponsor your car? Squirty came to me. They knocked on the front door of my house. Knock, knock. Can we sponsor your car? I'm like, let me think about it. People say, how did your career last so long?
Yeah.
I said, I sold product, man, so I could drive the car. That is a
and
great
it paid off for them, right? When you're building your house, you ask for square D. When I was building my shop, I said, well, got square D.
Herman's got square D.
Yeah, I got to have it too.
Yeah, there was a poster out there of Dale Earnhardt Sr., Rusty, Jimmy Spencer, all of us, because my sponsor was putting electric in your guys' garages, and man, that's a great story. Thanks for telling that. When you're tearing up $50 bills, life is good because you think that they're bad luck.
Yeah, but I lost them. I lost six $50 bills.
Yeah, that's just man, that was those days. I mean, that was incredible. Okay, deep breath. All right, we're leaving, and my notes now straighten me out. You become the field manager for Ford Racing, then you become the vice president of competition.
Right.
Okay, now let me just say this.
So there's a year in there.
Okay.
So at the end of the Penske thing, that was 01.
Yeah.
So that's the year that we lost Dale, right?
Yeah, right.
Things changed.
Oh, 100%.
In the sport. You look at it, and I did it when a study when I was at Ford, just about, we called it the DOB study, right? Driver's age, performance, things like that. We did all the drivers. 2001, everybody's stuff went down. It's just a fact. Along with age, with the driver ages, their performance changes, their qualifying numbers in those days, not now, maybe not now.
Well,
they retire
at 40 now.
Yeah, they got their qualifying numbers went down, lower. They went slower qualifying, but their finishing numbers went up. So as they matured, they realized that, 200
You must
laps is
first
better than
finish.
one lap.
Finish first. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had that going on. So 2001, your brother and I used to go to Dale's once every 2 or 3 weeks after we got done BSing around the shop on Tuesday with Jeffrey doing the setup, getting everything ready for the following week. He said, "Come on, let's go over see Dale." We'd go over see Dale, and we talked to. We did that for a couple years. So when Dale passed, it had a negative effect on a lot of stuff. And I'm sitting there, I spent a lot of time with him, and we knew a lot about each other and this, that, and the other. And so I was like, golly, I'm 40 some years old, and my kids are doing sports by themselves, and my wife's raising the kids, and I need to change. I need to do something. And I tried to get in a role at Penske to be like the team manager, just over competition, hire another smart crew chief to come in there, and then just kind of regulate these guys and work on projects and get 2 crew chiefs, right? And I just couldn't get it to go. Whether doesn't matter if there's somebody that didn't want it to happen or it wasn't going in the right direction, whatever. So at that time, Kyle calls and he's like, "Hey, I'm wrestling this big beast at level cross. Can you come do this thing?"
Yeah.
So at the time, I wasn't making any. I was trying to get the same position at Penske. I would have never left Penske ever if it didn't, if all this other stuff didn't happen, all the background noise. So I went to Kyle's. So we go in there, and he's got good money, whatever. And so I start setting stuff up. We got scale model wind tunnel program getting ready to happen. We're testing these guys. Christian Fittipaldi's in there. He's helping, he's running and testing and racing and whatever. And it's like I was just moving too fast for what they wanted to do or were able to do, or big pill to swallow, right? I was creating Penske over there, and it wasn't going well.
Gotcha.
I had a 10-year contract that lasted 11 months.
Welcome to the big time.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was in the middle. So he said, "Look, we got to part ways."
Yeah.
So that was devastating.
Let me say this.
The Ford. That led up to the Ford.
Yeah, but let me say this. Kyle Petty once said to me, "Everybody should split up every 3 years." He said that, and maybe he'll remember it. But that's competition, And I say it all the time. Father John, when he married Kim and me, he said, "Be careful, young man. Competition will kill you."
Yeah.
Nobody stays together. Nobody.
Yeah.
Except maybe Jeff Gordon and Rick. Every once in a while this phenomenal thing comes about.
Yeah.
But just because we leave and we part ways doesn't mean nobody failed. It's just it's competition. People get weird and Okay, so
Ford.
I guess what I'm saying to you is you're so successful. You did so good. When we look back on these things, don't even fret. We're kicking ass now. Everything's fine. So you become the field manager for Ford Racing, then the vice president of competition. And I want to say this. What this says in my brain is now all these Roger Penske and Ford, now the biggest people in auto racing, they look at Robin Pemberton as the man. He's smart. He understands, graphs, and he understands math. Now you're at a point in your life where you've laid your bed, and these big companies are like, Robin Pemberton. So you end up there. Just a quick snippet of Ford becoming vice president of competition.
So Ford. So when I left, I was out of work after Petty Enterprises. I had nothing. I called Jack Roush because even though we'd split, we were still friends.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Hey, Got anything? He's like, man, no, the quote was, there's no room at the inn, but let me work on some stuff.
Yeah.
So he thinks that I need to go to work, that Ford doesn't have a field manager, a presence in the Carolinas, right?
Yeah.
So he calls either Mike, I may have called Mike, I'm not sure, or Hunter, somebody down there. But anyways, so Bill calls and is like, we need to have you come, you need to do the field manager stuff. And so they get working on it. So Bill's calling France. He's saying it's a good deal. Mike Helton's saying it's a good deal. Jack Roush is saying it's a good deal.
For Ford?
For Ford.
I'll be damned.
So
How
they're
did
pushing to go
NASCAR
to
get
Ford.
involved? Okay.
Right. And Bill and I had been friends for a long time. A lot.
The owner of NASCAR, everybody.
Yeah.
Bill France. Yeah.
So anyway, so I go to work at Ford and we start to work on these projects and this, that, and the other. So it was a 3-year deal. About 16 months into it, Jim Hunter calls, right? You remember Jim?
Hunter.
Yeah.
Jim is the real owner of NASCAR right now.
Yeah, almost, yeah.
Well,
so, and he was one of Bill's guys.
Well, I mean, we lost him, and but
yeah. And so he said, Bill wants to talk to you, I said, okay, whatever. So the conversation happened that they now want me to come to NASCAR. And he's like, come here. I got something for you to do. I got something for you. You should come do this. And it's like,
he was so powerful
okay.
back in those days.
I said to Bill, God damn it. You just spent a month getting me a job at Ford that you wanted me to have. You preferred to me to be there. I was good for it. And now you're trying to get me out of there. So they worked a deal. And I left there in the late of the second year and went to work for competition department at vice president of competition. So
let me ask you this and teach me, because I don't know everything. I'm not Dale Jr. and I'm not Kyle Petty. Those two are historians. They know everything. What was the difference between Jim Hunter and Jim France? Are they family?
No. Hunter was media. Hunter did the media stuff.
He seemed bigger than life.
Yeah. Jim Hunter. He used to be at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Then he was at Darlington. He's been at he was the head of the media group at the time. He was the head of all
NASCAR.
The media guys at NASCAR.
God.
Jim Hunter. He was a great guy.
I mean, everybody loved him.
Yeah.
He wore that old number 48 hat.
Yeah. He was great. Yeah. He was a lot of fun to be around.
So he was just media in here the whole time. I'm thinking this guy is. Yeah. I guess sometimes you feel like the media runs the sport.
He swung a big stick in the company, in the time when Bill was there. He really did. It was, he was a pleasure to be around.
Okay, I'm not too embarrassed now because you do.
Yeah.
I guess that's why I just thought, everybody talked to him like he owned NASCAR, but I guess
and basically he did in his sort of way, He did.
Yeah,
he was a big guy.
Yeah, Jim Hunter, and everybody loved him so much.
Oh my God, he was fun too.
And now Jim France, I've interviewed Ben Kennedy.
Yeah,
and Ben Kennedy, he admitted, Jim France is the grand poobah nowadays. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so you did it for me. It's like, how do we get from Ford to NASCAR? All right, let me introduce you. Please allow me to introduce, you're a man of wealth and fame. Okay, you become the most controversial person in NASCAR in a long time, in a great way. And let me explain. You become the NASCAR vice president of competition. You were one of the most popular NASCAR officials of all time. And here's why. Because you created what you didn't realize in 2010 during a press conference when NASCAR was begging for excitement. You said, we're going to quit basically, I'm paraphrasing this, but you said, boys, have at it. And all hell broke loose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mentally. Robin Pemberton said, we can go back to policing ourselves. Boys, have at it.
And
What
have
do
a
you
good
remember?
time.
What do
Yeah.
you remember about that day and the week
Well,
after?
it was the first, it was the media thing with all the drivers there and everything, right? And so in the morning we had a meeting with Brian and whoever was in media and Mike and myself, and so whatever, half a dozen people. And Brian was explaining, like, look, we've become too sterile, right? We've become too clean cut, too nobody wants to do anything wrong, nobody wants to, get it on the edge, whatever that happens to be. He's like, how are you gonna? You got to get that message across. I mean, this is an hour before I go on stage. Like, there's no script. There's nothing. I didn't go up there with a piece of paper in my hand with anything. I didn't nothing. So I get talking. I've never seen the whole clip, so I don't know. I just know what people tell me, and so I get talking about things, and it was like, letting guys rub, letting it's
Police
okay,
themselves.
please. Right? Don't,
Yeah.
we've been judged too sterile, whatever led into it. And so it was the closing remarks. And I said, unscripted, I said, so boys, have at it and have a good time. And that was it.
Isn't it funny that,
Totally off the cuff.
and this is life, because they say the best laid plans are the ones that are not planned at all. At what point did you realize that you became a quote for history in NASCAR? Was it the day after? Was it after? Was it a month later?
I did not realize anything until Homestead.
Really?
And Homestead, so it's typical, it's Homestead. It's busy in the trailer. You got all kinds of folks walking in, musicians saying hi, this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so I get a text from somebody that's home watching, and they did a whole ESPN or whoever was doing the race then. I think it was ESPN. They did a whole clip of me. It was really weird, of boys have at it and have a good time, all this stuff going on, and it's kind of funny. And so they played it. It was on the air. I didn't know anything about it. We weren't watching TV. So my phone starts to go off. Hey, we just saw you on TV. Boys have at it, have a good time, this, that, and the other. All right, I didn't see it. So now forget who it was at TV. They call me. Hey, we need your approval for something. So they show up. They play it up in the lounge for Mike and myself, and I think somebody else. Jim might have been up there. And I was like, okay, yeah. When are you going to do it? Well, we're going to. We don't know yet or what. I'm not in the loop on what they've been doing, or he opened the door. Well, they've already been playing it.
Yeah.
And so there it was, and it was different, you know what I mean?
It was awesome. I loved it. And here's why I loved it. I want to be specific. The caution came out in Phoenix when I first started racing in Cup 93. The caution come out and I kept going. Terry Labonte was so mad at me. He started roughing me up. And after the race, I said, why are you so mad at me? He goes, when the caution comes out, we all slow up, Kenny.
Yeah.
I realized at that time, we're not a union, but we all got our own deal here on the racetrack.
Right.
And like when I went out to make a qualifying run, we don't pull out in front of each other.
Right.
There were subtle rules inside NASCAR that we just did because it was
the unwritten rules. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's what we called it. It's an
as
unwritten rule.
as time went on, you had the right rules because new people coming in, some listened, you listened,
Oh
right?
yeah.
There's
Oh
others that
yeah.
didn't listen, right? That's why we've got, freeze the field. Don't race back to the caution.
Right.
That one day in New Hampshire with guys strewing on the front stretch and they're running
Dale Jarrett
hell
parked
bent for
sideways.
election to get to the line.
Yeah.
It was that's
So,
that's how the rule book gets thicker.
yeah, when you said boys have at it, I thought, oh, well, we've done that our whole life. I wreck him, he wrecks me back, and now we're
Yeah,
going to dinner together
yeah,
because that's the way it was.
yeah,
I mean, one of the greatest shows in NASCAR history was Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Jeff Bodine.
yeah,
I mean, what a show. They made a movie out of it.
yeah,
It was a funny movie, but it was great.
yeah.
Okay. I want to ask this question. We're ending now. Your time as the NASCAR vice president of competition, um, I studied you. And in the end, this is what I want to know. How hard was it to officiate your crew member friends? You were in that garage area your whole life.
Yeah.
And you understood it all. Those are your blood brothers.
Right.
Now you have, and the thing you and Gary Nelson shared in common is you knew how to work in the gray area. And NASCAR knew that about you. They knew you knew how to work in the gray area, just like Gary Nelson. So now they're asking you to find all the great areas. How hard was it on you to officiate your friends?
Well, as it started, each side was waiting for me to fix the other side, right?
Yeah.
So NASCAR wanted me to not fix it, but understand the gray areas, slow some of the stuff down, and then the competition side, my friends in the garage, right? They were like, those guys don't know anything, and this, that, and the other, and blah blah blah. So I had to balance that with educating the garage area on what nobody would educate them on. For instance, I used to talk to Greg Zipadelli a lot, and back in the day, for whatever reason, we just were friends. And I would say to him, I said, this is how they work things. Like the rules are a year in advance. We are working on stuff a year in advance. They don't work on something on Monday to release on a Thursday. And I would say, for instance, this or timing and scoring, or they're looking at their the weights, the weight of the car, or the templates, or whatever it took. In those days, the cars were they were out of bounds a lot, and so it was both sides of things. I said, they do this, and I'm telling you how hard they work in advance, a lot harder than you give them credit for in the garage area. And it wasn't just him; it was Robbie Loomis. There was others I talked to. I said, but they don't understand how hard it is for you when you're working. Like there was part of it that didn't know that you needed a year's notice on things, to obsolete cars, to equipment, or different things like that. So it was a two-way street, because I was able now to see peek behind the curtain. And so I took the good on both sides and tried to communicate that to both sides. There was nobody in the wrong. Everybody was in the right. There was misunderstandings on some of this stuff,
Yeah.
And so I just, all the time. And there was those, that I had more meetings with than others based on them pushing the rules, Chad Knaus and I got to be great friends,
Boy,
and we were.
you talk about an intense individual, man. Oh
Oh my
man.
God. He was
Wow.
something. Yeah.
Okay, so here we are. I'm going to say this, and then this is the last thing. You and I have raced our whole life. We're fabricators. To this day, I work on my own stuff. is it fair to say that the sport, the building of the race car became so out of hand that the teams had so many cars per driver? Most teams had 10 to 15 cars per driver.
We had 18 for your brother. 18.
There you go, everybody. So the sport becomes so out of hand because we want a car for Bristol. We want a car for the road course. We want a car for intermediate. We want a car for Daytona Talladega. That it was costing the car owners so much money.
Yeah.
And you couldn't control these guys.
Right.
The Bristol fiasco where the car is so cattywamped that you park the car. And now you were part of NASCAR going, look, the car owners are screaming at us. The car owners are coming to you guys. Is that what happened? The car owners said, we got 15, 18 cars per driver. Stop this.
They get a lot of credit for there's a lot of credit that goes to the teams or criticism, whatever. I think that NASCAR their job is to deploy this system, templates, regulation, all of this stuff. Behind the curtain, there's owners that go and say, look, you've got to stop this. We are our own worst enemy.
Right.
Right. And even though some of them may have appeared to have a bottomless pit of money, they were seeing it was a bad way to go. Now, what I don't hear out there is the same owners saying, well, NASCAR is doing the right thing. NASCAR, yeah, this is exactly what we all wanted. You don't hear a lot of that, but I'm telling you, that's where it starts. You're regulating the sport as far as how people want to be regulated. If it's going to be a Cowboys and Indians where everybody's going their own ways and doing this other thing, that's what we had in the 90s and in the 2000s. And when money came in and you could have 18 race cars, a Bristol only car, your Talladega car wasn't the same as your Daytona car because it took less downforce at Talladega than Daytona. It's insane.
Insane.
Right? But when money come in with no rules, you exploited those rules to your advantage. You didn't have 12 people on a team. It was 20, it was 30, it was 50. And I hear now 100 or 75 to 100 people per car number, things like that.
And now Ray Evernham is flying in an athletic pit crew on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Yeah. We had our own athletes at Sabco. It was the first place I worked that had a gym, and they had trainers that come in. And so we would work out every day at Felix's. I was a front tire changer. You know what I mean? And you would do pit stops at 6:00 at night before you went home. But Ray forced that issue, and that wasn't a bad thing by any means, but it's crazy,
Okay.
And so to get back to the basics is the car owners needed, they pushed it. And NASCAR, I'm sure I wasn't there at the time. I was there for some of it. Said, okay, this is what you got. We're going to have a single source gearbox, a single source for hubs and uprights, and you got your own manufacturers for engines. We're going to have a single source for body panels that are composite, that are, it's still hard to control the quality and the spec on all of that stuff. I mean, you walk into a shop and people have got bodies under heat lamps and shop bags trying to get them to either just get into the zone or to get to the advantage side of the zone or the tolerance of the templates, whatever that happens to be. But there's a lot of work. It's just gone in a different direction. But a lot of this came, I can guarantee you, the NASCAR higher ups, they didn't wake up one morning and said, we're going to go spec racing. The only thing that The only thing at me personally, I wished that, and nothing against anything other, I wish the gearbox was made in USA. I wish it was a USA.
Where's it made?
It's Italy, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's good stuff everywhere. You know, I just wish that stuff was done with United States manpower and stuff. I mean, I'm sensitive to that a little bit,
Yeah,
and
we all are.
so, you know, that's the only thing. I've gotten, some guys have asked me to come and show me their cars when the teams are gone, different things, and I go look around, and it's like that stuff's nice. Like that's well thought out, strong. I hate that the toe links break and stuff like that, but it's nice stuff. It's nice equipment. It'd be nice to work on it.
So the Gen 7 car, this reminds me of the Wizard of Oz movie. You peel the curtain back in
Yeah.
NASCAR, and Roger Penske, Jack Roush, Richard Childress, they're all going, build the Gen 7 car so it saves us money. So it is a little upsetting to me that, and I agree with you, I wish NASCAR, I wish Jim France and Steve O'Donnell would have Roger Penske, have Jack Roush. They could take a lot of heat off of NASCAR.
Yeah.
If the car owners went, look, we asked for this
Right.
car.
Right.
And I agree with you. And I wish they would do that. And I want to be clear to everybody watching this. We just de-bullshit everything. The owners wanted this Gen 7 car because, as Robin said, at one time, Rusty Wallace had 18 cars. So there you go, everybody. It's not cussing, but we just de-bullshitted it all for real. I've been screaming at the top of my lungs, quit getting so mad at NASCAR. They did what the owners wanted because we were spending too much money.
I'll tell you what, I like the tires falling off. The show at North Wilkesboro was tremendous. It was a tremendous show. I mean,
Unbelievable.
it's like they raced better than we did when we were there.
Yes.
When everybody had different cars, when you had a Wilkesboro, Martinsville only car, right? We didn't.
Nuts.
You know what I mean? I thought it was tremendous. I really did. I think that, the tires were perfect for that deal. You could do 4, 2, or none on a short run or whatever. That type of scenario. That's on the dartboard. That's the bullseye for like, what tires do we need at Martinsville or Richmond, or what tires do we need at some of these other places that, let you pit early or run long. The Bristol thing was a surprise to me that you could run 35 laps. I'm not in the sport, but I watch every lap I can, obviously.
Right.
And so
we watch the replays.
Until the track rubbered in, and then the track rubbered in, you could run a long fuel stop on it. It was perfect.
It's amazing. The tires were in the cords. They were going to blow out in practice, and you drop the green flag, you run forever.
Yeah.
How do you guess that?
Yeah.
I don't want to be Goodyear. I don't want to be Goodyear.
No, they got a hard road. I mean, especially what if it doesn't ever warm up? What's a 40-degree day and not a 65-degree day, and the rubber takes differently, and that's a target that's hard to hit. God bless those guys.
Robin, I got to go. I'm headed to the Mayo Clinic. I just now panicked. We have been doing this. You are officially the longest one ever. You're an hour and 40 minutes. Hey, listen, everybody. There he is, Robin Pemberton. Are you doing anything right now?
No, not right now. I'm this afternoon. I'm going to go down and see some friends at the Hall of Fame announcement. Just hang out with them.
I forgot.
Yeah, it'll be good.
They're going to put you in the Hall of Fame.
No.
As a pioneer.
No.
Okay, everybody.
Looking forward to it. All right, stay in touch.
Oh, I will. Well, listen up, everyone. If you want to see Robin Pemberton's pretty face on Kenny Conversation, it's right here on the Kenny Wallace YouTube show, or go over on Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s Dirty Mo Media podcast, and you can listen to Kenny Conversation in both places. Robin, thank you so much.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you, buddy. All right. There he is, one of the smartest men in NASCAR. Call him up. He might come to work for you. Maybe. He's got it pretty
For a
good
little,
right now.
little part-time action, something.
All right, everybody. Until the next Kenny Conversation, we'll see you later. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.